How we living, boys? There will be a lot of yapping in this video, so no crazy intro. Let's get right into it. This is how to choose the correct build as Briar. To start with a disclaimer, I would like to say that you can just straight up main any build that you want. I main Titanic. I think it's best, even on patches where people are like, oh, Logan is the best. I'm still playing it because it's what I'm best with, and I know my angle is best, and so on. And the same applies for you, where whatever you main, sometimes it might be best that you play your main build over just swapping to the correct build because you think that, you know, there's something more to gain. I think you being comfortable does have a lot of value. Now, obviously, there's variants to this where someone's going to be like, what about if I main Enchanter Briar? Obviously, we're not talking about you, weirdo. Nice. So if you have done this with me before, then you know I'm going to show you champions, and I'm going to talk to you about what you would have to do to pull off each build. Now, basically, I'm just going to say high damage build, or I'm going to say tanky being Bruiser. That's, you know, you take that, whatever build you play, and just fit it into the category there. That's how we're going to do this. So this first team comp here, you have frontline, you have a synergistic bot lane, which is good. Not like that. When I see enemy teams like this, I think it is important to note that enemy team comes first, and then your team can definitely like bridge the gap in a way. So when I see a team like this, I think it is very hard to play high damage builds into this team. Why do I think that? Because the ease of access for them to manipulate with your W or just do their own game plan, really. So someone like Jax, it's very rare that Jax will never not use Counter-Strike, his E, the thing that makes you stop hitting him. He almost always will get to use that spell at least once. So because of that, I think if you go a high damage build, he's going to deal enough damage to kill you during that Counter-Strike, and that will suck. Same thing goes for Ka. Sometimes if you take a bad W, he just goes invis and kills you, and if you're too squishy, you will lose that fight. Zoe, same thing. If you go at Zoe with WQ, you have to really tank the bubble, unless, you know, your timing is really good and you're able to find a time where she is using bubble on someone else, and then you get there, then really like any build would deal enough damage to kill a Zoe there, so that's like kind of its own thing. And then you got Jinx, Thresh. Jinx has traps, Thresh has hook, flay, box, and lantern. So in all cases here, this to me screams Titanic by Cleaver. Try and deal a lot of really fast burst damage when you can. Now, Titanic is really good at fast bursts. Why is that? Because you get the point and click auto attack. So the idea there is that when these guys are out of their cooldowns or out of the thing that messes with us a little bit, we will then slam them with a WQ auto attack, Titanic auto attack W2. It's a really fast burst. You can do it in about like less than a second, and that part is really good for Briar. So overall, just thinking about, you know, their damage and how they want to do it and how much damage they're going to do no matter what. Sometimes it sets this standard that you need to have at least some sort of tankiness, some sort of way to deal with their damage. Unless you're always just getting a frame perfect fight where, you know, you can go full lethality this game, and if every fight starts with Aatrox hitting a Q1 into W into Q2 and he's just full CCing someone and then you just hop in, that's amazing. And those are the times that I talk about you can make any build work with good timing and everything, but sometimes you're just going to need a little bit more, you know, situational awareness and your team to also, like, you know, bridge the gap for you sometimes. But overall, if you're putting everything in your hands, you would just go Titanic this game. You try and tank for your team a little bit more because that's conducive, right? You can always tank for your team. Whether it's worth it or not, now that's a different question. Either way, I would go Titanic in here. I would wait until their cooldowns that counter me are down or used elsewhere. I would hop in. I would deal as much damage as I could. I would send my E, and then I would, you know, run away from that fight for a little bit. I'd stay right on the edge, and then I'd hop back in, try and do the same thing. I'd play the game out through these really fast combos, and that's how I would handle a draft like this. Again, you could just play Bork, maybe you snowball. I think it is important to note that when you're snowballing, you can get away with a lot of things because they won't deal as much damage, and then your damage matters more and so on. But either way, in a standard case, no snowball, no BS, even teams, Titanic takes the cake for this game. Now, if you had to guess, what would you say that this lobby is if you just took any of Briar's first starting items? What would you think is the best one here? And I'll even give you a second. Maybe I can play funny sound effect for you. You probably did great. You probably did. Okay. This one is a Blade of the Ruined King lobby, okay? And why is that? Because they have health stacker, person that builds some health, person that builds some health, person that builds some health, and so on. But either way, not only because Bork is good at dealing with health damage, but just because they're low CC, you can always get your damage in. They have a lot of people that will be taking 1v1s, right? Caston wants to play side lane to get level 16 to then team fight, so you have a lot of time to get good Bork value. Mundo wants to split push, hit those turrets. Dana likes to team fight a lot more, but in jungle, you can obviously obviously force 1v1s a little bit more. And then Ezreal and Rakan, you know, they're going to run from you a good bit. The added Bork slow is really good for that. And I think that Bork is so astoundingly good against their team that your team comp wouldn't even matter. And sometimes that is the case, and that's what is really very tough to explain sometimes. Is, you know, enemy team matters first. So if your build just counters them, your build counters them, and life is really good, right? Overall, if your team in certain drafts is so bad, you might have to pick up Titanic, just go full tank anyway. But so even in a time like this, like I could have a really troll pick here. Give me Annie top here, and even when you see I don't have frontline in this game, you might be like, well, are you going to go Titanic this game? You very well could. There's a lot of good situations that could happen from Titanic here. But overall, I think if you were like really min-maxing your Briar, I think Bork could get the most value. Go Bork into Black Cleaver. I would likely grab like a Sundered Sky to get a little bit more tanky, then a Death Dance, and we'd be set up. And, you know, I think that if you don't see the angle for Bork here, I think that's okay, because this could also just be a Kraken game. Kraken's a weird spot where people are like, hey, Logan, what's Kraken? So I'm going to basically start that rant now. Stick with me. All right, time to go on a little Kraken rant. So a lot of people ask like, hey, what's the deal with Kraken? What is it? How do I do it? What, like, explain it to me, Logan. And this is the way that I can explain it. I would say that Bork has an identity. It's the 1v1 item. It is the tank killing, the HP stacking item. It has an identity. Titanic is the squishy killer item. It is also the tanky squishy killer item. So if you want to kill squishies really fast, auto attack reset helps with that idea so well. Now you have things like lethality, right? Lethality is just the I kill anything. Mostly I kill squishies the fastest, alongside crit being in the same lane there. And then you have the high CDR builds, which are like enemy team has really annoying cooldown, so I go this thing. And then you have everything else. So what's Kraken's thing? Kraken to me is one of my most beloved Briar items. Okay, don't get that twisted, but its thing is it lacks identity. And because of that, that's what I think messes people up with understanding what to do with it, okay? It is generic. It is a damage item first, okay? It can then split to being a full damage build, where you go Kraken into Bork into, you know, other on-hit items and do really well. Or it can go Kraken into Black Cleaver and play for team a little bit more. I think it just lacks identity, and that's the thing. That doesn't make it bad, it just makes it kind of tough to understand, where, you know, it deals more damage to people that are low health. Briar kind of already does that. If you can play around your, you know, your understanding of every third hit, I get a big chunk of damage, and you're able to manage that in fights where, like, you're always getting one, two, or three Kraken procs. In some situations, it actually can get more value than other builds. But that's the thing. It's not many other Briar builds have like a gated understanding of like, I have to meet this requirement to do these things, right? Bork has like a 3 auto passive, but that happens by default if you do anything as Briar. So overall, Kraken just slightly loses its identity, and we can even go to Masters Plus here, and it's not like Kraken really falls off. It kind of just falls in line with other damage items, where it's just a damage item. Now, I will say it's not really represented in high elo very much, because then Titanic starts taking over. That just is what it is. That's a tried and true Briar Bible, the Bible, if you will, fact. So it is what it is. That's my idea of Kraken. It's just something that lacks a little bit of identity. It's not really obvious what it wants to do or the situation that it wants to do. I would say it's just a generic item that can really do anything. The rest of your items will fill in the gaps, but it is by default just a really good generic item. Now we have another situation where I realized in this video, like, there's going to just be a little bit of work on you guys, and I'm not changing that. I think it is good for each individual player to take their own stance on these things. So I presented you with this lobby where you have a full AD team. Their team doesn't really stack armor that great, but they are squishy, but they deal a lot of damage. What would you go in this game? And we're gonna wait, man. I think not cutting out this time. It's good. And I'm also gonna let you think a little bit. I'm gonna quiet down. Wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong as hell. No, I'm kidding. So here I would go lethality. If I was really taking it into my own hands, I would try and snowball on lethality here. Because we are all AD, it can sometimes let them get enough like efficient like plated steel caps options, but I don't think that's the biggest deal. I just think that they're squishy enough that I can always hop into a fight, get one, and then get out. Because Nami Bubble you can outplay, Elise Cocoon you can bait, Echo W you likely would buffer your E into, or same thing with Camille E. So overall, I would likely go lethality into this lobby in particular if I'm like paying a lot of attention to it, but that's only if I'm comfortable with lethality. I do think that when you play high damage bruiser builds and you play Titanic, that is very interchangeable. When you swap to lethality, you have to be a bit quicker on the map. You have to be ready for the difference in your combo and waiting for Hail Blades procs and so on. You really do play different enough that I think some of you guys that aren't very equipped for lethality just yet because you haven't put in enough time are actually doing yourself disservices by going this build, because you're not as comfortable. You approach fights like a bruiser, not an assassin, and you find yourself in the front line and then life goes really bad. So if you're ever playing front to back as lethality, I recommend look for a flank ult and get back to the back line. Halfway through a game, you'll realize I started playing like an assassin, then I started falling back on my bruiser basics. Go back to playing like an assassin. Be unknown, use sweeper, flank ults are huge. Now, if you're not a lethality enjoyer of this game, this is actually, to me, just a Titanic game because I want to get straight to Black Cleaver so that my team can deal more damage, because Black Cleaver does reduce their armor, and that helps my team do a little bit more damage. But overall, Titanic is best because of their very squishy nature. You could go really anything in this lobby, but I think if you go high damage builds and you try and go blow for blow versus this team, you might find yourself in a bad situation because of Elise Cocoon and Repel, and sometimes a good Echo, EW or just Echo damage in general can catch you lacking. If you fall prey to Nami Bubble antics, life will get very sad. And if Camille holds her E and always bounces you out of your Q, life can get painful really fast. So I don't think you really need to go Bork this game. If you're like truly min-maxing, I think Titanic gets a lot more value. But overall, you could do any of the builds here. This is one of the times where I think just you being comfortable is the most important thing, but I would lock Titanic. Now, this is a situation I see you guys in all the time, and this one sucks and feels terrible, but it does happen all the time and you need to be prepared. So what would you do here, right? So you have Varus versus Gragas, which should be a winning matchup. You have Veigar versus Galio, which you should be able to just scale it up with your Veigar, and if Galio gets roaming, life is going to get tough. And then you have Samira Pike bot lane, which, you know, Braum can be very good into, but if Samira Pike just find Zeri ever, he insta-dies. So, what do you do in a time like this? Well, I think you should just go Titanic here, because your team needs frontline. And despite, like, this being the best Bork game ever, where, Gragas E's you slide W past it, and then you just kill him, that'd be insane. Bork is good against Hecarim for the damage, but not only that, the skirmish power plus just with a flat-out slow on him can mess him up a little bit. Galio, again, if you dodge his engage, hit W, that guy just folds. And then Zeri, right, Bork, you should be killing it, he carries. And then Braum, whatever, he's surrounded by time. So you could pick up something like in this game, like Bork, Black Cleaver, Sterix. Oh my god, you would crank, right? But the problem is your team is so squishy and has no front line. Sometimes in a game like this, you should or could go Titanic, stand in front of your team and let them deal the damage, right? So Briar would like Bork against these champions, but Titanic might be the only way that you see the other end of the universe here, where, if you go in with Bork, get one tapped, boom, your team can't play the game. So sometimes you do have to pick up the slack based on your team and the champions that they choose. And this example is to show that, yes, their team does matter at most first, right? But there's some discrepancies here where if your team comp really has nothing to stand in front of your damage dealers, what is your plan? Here, I would go Titanic, and I would try and get as efficiently tanky as possible. So this is basically how I look at builds, where if I'm planning to be a tanky bruiser, then I'm going to go Titanic, I'm going to aim to kill squishies, or frontline for my team. If I plan to be a 1v1 machine and kill people that stack health, or if I'm looking to slow people down to chase them down and kill them, I'm going to go Bork. You do always have high damage builds like Crit and Lethality on Briar. They're some of the most fun. They're very good at taking over a game, but they come with the, the sad part, that is, if you mess up often, you will be a cannon minion to certain teams that have a lot of CC. Overall, I'd say the gameplay does matter most, and one of the things things that I do see, and I'm sorry if this is you, this is a lot of League players where they equivalent that a build is good because they're winning rather than their gameplay. I will be the first person and the last person to say gameplay matters over these items. Just play good. Genuinely. Stop making mistakes. Stop trying to, oh, I can make this many mistakes that I build this way. Like, yeah, those things are fun sometimes, but the reality of like real climbing is that your gameplay matters most. And a lot of times when people are evaluating their builds, they're like, hey, I'm getting a lot of wins on it. Meanwhile, they're actually playing really insanely well. They're not making as many mistakes. They're seeing good punishes that they could likely build anything. There's a reason why I got Masters in solo queue with no duo playing AP Briar. Do I think that AP Briar is better than people think? Sure. But regardless of that, it's because you play good. You don't make mistakes. You try and take builds to their peak, right? And I think it is so important to realize that gameplay matters more than these builds. So I just wanted to take a second and really say that a lot of you guys are playing a lot better than you think. A lot of you guys are better than what you think. And because of that, instead of giving yourself credit for the cool things that you do, you're just like, whoa, look at the item. And it's like, no, you're playing good. You played good. You punished that guy. It didn't matter what you built. And sometimes that feels kind of bad where like, it's like, oh, maybe, I love this build. I really want to hype up this build. And the reality is that if I give myself credit, maybe that takes away from the build. But you're sick. The build is sick, but it's you two together, man. It's you two together. Sorry about getting a little off topic there, but the reality is that I'm trying to help you figure out what the best build is for each game where you're deciding, hey, I can build this into this team. I'm trying my hardest to figure out what gives me the biggest or the most competitive advantage against enemy teams, utilizing looking at my teams. Again, I do think it is very important. Enemy team matters most because the amount of times that you're going to be with your team is a lot less. So you do have to deal with enemy team a lot more and in just more direct ways of letting you play the game. So overall, what I think you should do is you should look at enemy team, figure out what you have to do. If they have high CC, you might have to get tanky. You might have to play a certain way. You can go high damage against CC heavy teams as long as you play around it and you let your team get those cooldowns and you find an angle. Your gameplay has to match what you're building and stuff like that. So, this is supposed to let you figure out like, hey, there's other ways to approach winning the game, right? Yeah, so, there will be times where you need to be the 1v1 god and run around with Bork. There will be times where the enemy team has 5 squishies and you can just take over the lobby off the jump. There will be times where you need to build Titanic stand in front of, your team. Maybe you need to go Eclipse under the sky if you want to just play like fast burst against enemy team. If they had like a longer, team fight cons where they get stronger as team fight goes. You have Yumus. Maybe you want to just like take over the map really fast. I mean, there's multiple different ways to play this game. That's all fine and dandy. I stuck to the most picked ones here. Obviously the people that are doing these things, they're going to figure it out themselves. They're doing okay. But this is for the average Briar player. This is how I approach the game itself where, I try and look at enemy team. What do I need to do? What can I do? Do I have these options? And then which one do I think gives me the best chance to interact with my team and kill enemy team? And putting all of those things together is really what allows you to get all these jobs done and climb in a very conducive way. Again, I think it is most important to pick a meta build and just spam it when you're trying to learn. So that way you can really build up your fundamentals and try other things and just build upon that knowledge. Sometimes you have to play like an assassin on Titanic build. Sometimes you have to play like a frontliner on Lethality build. Utilize all those skills and bring them together to get the best out of your climb. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. I know this was a lot of talk and yapping. It is what it is. I like this. You do too. Have a good one. Peace.